Okay, it is Monday, April 27th, 2020 at 5:05 p.m. and I'm calling this Committee of the Whole, the Lansing City Council, to order. And I would ask that would our clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Betts,
Yep.
Councilmember Dunbar,
Here.
Councilmember Garza,
Councilmember Garza is present.
Councilmember Hussein,
Here.
Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Spatafor,
Present.
Councilmember Spitzley,
Here.
and Councilmember Wood.
Here.
Thank you. All council members are present. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from March 16th, 2020. Vice President Hussein.
President Spatafor, I would move the meeting minutes for March 16th as presented.
The minutes have been moved. All those, would the clerk please call the roll of those?
Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Betts,
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar,
Yes.
Councilmember Garza,
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein,
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson. I don't see Councilmember Jackson up here. Councilmember Spatafor,
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
I don't see Councilmember Jackson, so I'll say 7-0.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson looks like he's disconnected. All right, next up is public comment. Those wishing to provide public comment may do so. You will be given your 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes. If you're participating on a Mac computer, the command stroke to raise your hand is option Y. If you're participating on a Windows machine, please push Alt-Y. If you're participating on the phone, it is *9. And if you're using a tablet PC, you have to go to the participants list and push Raise Hand. So anyone wishing to give public comment, I will give you 30 seconds to raise your hand starting now. And just as a reminder, those who wish to submit public comment in writing may do so over email or regular mail. Council staff is checking our mail and our email boxes while the building is closed. So we're closing out public comment. If you do not wish to speak now, forever hold your peace. Let me just double check. All right. No public comment. The first thing we have going for us is a presentation from the Lansing Housing Commission on their annual report. And we will ask that Executive Director Doug Fleming please turn on your video. And Mr. Fleming, you've been granted host authority, so you can share your screen.
Thank you. First, I'm going to have Ryan Robinson, the president of Lansing City Council, I think is on. And Ryan was going to preference my presentation with some of his comments first. Ryan, you there?
I am. Thanks, Doug. And thanks for having some time tonight to present our annual report. This coming July will be my 5th year serving on the Housing Commission board. And this year representing my 2nd year acting as board president. And we've worked through a lot of challenging times over those years. And the last 12 months, we've had a lot of exciting things happening. Doug's already shared some of those with you in the past. We'll share some more with you tonight. But the redevelopment opportunities we have going on right now throughout the portfolio are very exciting and significant in the grand scheme of housing in the city of Lansing. So happy to be here with you tonight to answer questions that you have. And Doug, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
All right. I'm going to share my screen here. Can everybody see my presentation?
Yes.
All right. I got a few pages. I'm going to go through them. If anybody has a question at any point during the presentation, feel free to just ask.
Mr. Fleming, I'll probably overrule you here. Let's wait till the end and ask questions at the end, because then we can see each other, because it's hard to do without the full view up. So folks, if you could just hold your questions till the end, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Perfect. That's fine, Peter. Then I'm going to fly through this then. First, get my computer to work here. First thing is just when a quick overview. We want to provide you of what our purpose, our programs, and our portfolio are. We want to review a little bit of our progress over the last year, talk a little bit about our strategic plan and where we're focusing in the city, and also then at the end talk about the ordinance change that's before the group tonight as well. Just a little background information. We have two primary focuses here at the Housing Commission. One is actually our property portfolio, where we own properties in the city, both major projects, Leroy Fro, Hildebrandt, Mount Vernon, and South Washington. And then we also have a lot of scattered houses. We receive direct rents from the tenants in HUD. We manage the day-to-day issues with our tenants and with HUD. We execute the maintenance for all the programs. And then we also organize community service programs. And most importantly to me is that we establish a culture for our community of what we're trying to do in terms of housing as it relates to the Lansing Housing Commission. We also have a housing choice voucher program. The difference between that is that folks qualify for a voucher. They come to us, and then we provide the financial rent for them, for a lack of a better term, and they go out and find housing with another landlord in the greater Lansing area. We're not just in Lansing. We go out to Potterville, Charlotte, Okemos, East Lansing. So we have a bigger footprint as it relates to the housing choice voucher program. This is just kind of a screen that gives you a graphical representation of what each one of the properties look like. Mount Vernon, 140 units, South Washington with 187, Hildebrandt and Leroy both have 100, and then we have various scattered sites, 183 single-family homes, some duplexes, and then Forest and Hoyt are 2 units on the east side of the city, and then the central office that I'm coming to you from tonight. To review our progress over the last couple of years, the big thing that we've been trying to do is have these pillars of concentration where we've looked at the different areas and trying to decide, not to decide, but try to manage to these. In terms of culture, you can see that I already talked about that a little bit, that's a big thing, setting the tone for what we're trying to do, what we want to do, and how we want to do it. Compliance, which is a big part, executing HUD and the compliance requirements. A lot of that's just done through training. We've had some procurement training, some fair housing training, those kind of things. Under capital planning, one of the big things there is aligning the capital with the value add higher impact areas. And what we mean there is there was capital funds being spent prior to me getting here, and I didn't always feel like they were being spent in the highest priority areas that you got either the biggest bang for your buck, or they were really dedicated towards improving the lives of our tenants. And that's really what we've tried to do with our capital spending over the last 18 months or so. And then the other thing is the last point there under capital planning is to develop a long-term goal and plan so that we're not just putting out fires, that we actually have a plan of how we're going to spend our capital money, why we're spending it that way, and making sure that it's part of the overall strategic plan moving forward. Communication-wise, basically enhancing communications with relevant stakeholders and developing new stakeholders, quite frankly. As I tell my staff, I'm kind of taking all meetings right now with groups in the city to see what they have, what they want, what they have to offer, and how we might be able to work together between their organization and ours. We've developed a few relationships as a result of that. Others, we're still out there kind of trying to feel what we might be able to do together and how we might partnership. We've implemented some new communication tools. We've got a quarterly newsletter that I've been sharing with City Council. I'm hoping that you're getting your copy of that. And we're about ready to upload our website redesign that should be out in the next 30 days or so. Operationals, just improving some of our processes you can see there, and then strategy, some of the things we're doing. The biggest on the right-hand side, the high-level accomplishments that I really want to point out is that we've transitioned LHC from a HUD troubled performer when I took over We had to fulfill some things with HUD to make sure that we got out of that, and we now have been operating as a standard performer public housing authority since early in 2019. In addition to the high level accomplishments, we've also had some lower ones, smaller ones. A big one is our resident programs. It's really been a priority to me to not only introduce new programs to interact with our tenants, but more importantly, to evaluate the ones that we already had out there. We kind of had a hodgepodge of programs. One of the first things that I did early last year was hired a resident services coordinator, who the first goal for her was to go through and look at all the programs that we had that we were operating, what value were they bringing to our residents, and did we need to continue, what was the cost benefit ratio, and then move on from there to look at other programs that were out there. As a part of that, we completed a resident survey to identify some resident needs, what some of the challenges were, why they weren't participating in programs, what kind of programming that they wanted. And then we've also been conducting resident meetings to educate them both about the Lansing Housing Community Commission strategy, and then also to gather feedback from our residents. And we'll continue to do that. Operational efficiency, you can see the ones we've done there, and then infrastructure investment. Again, as I said, we've deployed capital strategically to upgrade facilities, reduce our long-term costs, and support our resident life. And one of the real focuses there has been safety and security. As a part of completing the resident survey, we found a bunch of things that we needed to improve on. I would say the big ones that I'm excited about, and they've kind of gotten delayed or sideways here a little bit because of COVID, but the big one is that we restarted the garden project down at South Washington Park. We're expanding it to Leroy Fro, working with the city and the garden that's right next to Leroy Fro, and partnering with Michigan State University's extension service. And they're going to bring in education not only on how to plant the plants and maintain the plants, but then following up that with how to process the plants, how to store them, how to use them in recipes, so that we complete the full circle of not just having a garden, but what do you do with the stuff that comes in the garden, and how do you process it and keep it, and that kind of stuff. We're in the third year planning of the Summer Spectacular. We focus on our 5 pillars, we call them, of education, history, government, fitness, and entrepreneurship, working with the youth at our projects to try to enhance them as a part of that. There's also a meal program that goes with that. We do this in cooperation with the City of Lansing and the Parks and Rec Department. They've been great partners with us in doing that. The GED program at South Washington Park continues. We currently have 16 students. We picked up a few new students as a result of the newsletter, so we're really excited that people were reading the newsletter and then followed up. We also provide transportation. Even though the program is held at South Washington Park, we offer transportation tokens for any of our residents at any of our projects to come to South Washington and participate in the GED program. The other thing is that we've also developed a relationship with community mental health. We're right in the middle of training of how to work with people that have mental disabilities, make sure that our staff, this includes our maintenance as well as our managers, understand the signs of mental health, how to approach people, how to work with them. We're working hard to make sure that we just don't call the police and get them removed from the building, but maybe identify some things that we can do to try to disarm or to reduce the situation that may come up. And then even working with some of our challenged residents on a day-to-day basis as well. There's some other programs and activities there as well. I'm not going to go through them all, but you can review them. A big thing that we've focused on is operational improvements to deliver better value to our residents. Obviously, work orders was a big one when I came in. Last year, you can see that we completed over 2,200 work orders. That's 11% more than what we completed in 2018, which is actually my first full year here. And then the bigger thing was the average days to complete the work orders. In 2018, we averaged 65. We're now down to 48 days. Most of the days, our operational goal, our expectation is 30 days that we've worked with our board on, but some of them get outside of that simply because we're waiting for materials to arrive. So if they get beyond 30, it's usually a back order or something that we have to go out and get. And just as a reminder, in September of 2017, when I took over, South Washington itself, at that time, had 124 work orders, and it had a 189-day average in terms of getting those work orders completed. So we've improved on that tremendously, and that's a credit to my management and our maintenance staff, who've been doing a great job. Next screen, over the last year, we've dedicated a lot of money to capital improvements. As we said earlier, we're trying to put them where we think they have the most effect in terms of value. At all sites, we've completed some asphalt and concrete work. We've installed security cameras at all of the main communities. Those will be expanded upon in our RAD transformation that we're going to talk about in a minute. We've installed new windows across the scattered site portfolio. These were all as a result of the City of Lansing inspections that said these windows, while they were okay, they did not meet current requirements. And so we went through and spent a couple $100,000 upgrading the windows in those properties. We purchased some new vehicles for our maintenance people. And then down below, you can see the other improvements that we made. The one thing I do want to point out is in the furnaces and hot water heaters. Those are high efficiency furnaces and hot water heaters that were put in. We did that in cooperation with a government program run through the energy companies, and we installed over $600,000 worth of furnaces and hot water heaters at no cost to Lansing Housing Commission. So that was a great achievement that we're real excited about, and obviously reduces our energy bills considerably across the portfolio. The Housing Choice Voucher Program, as I indicated earlier, is another significant part of what we do here at Lansing Housing Commission. We have about 1,700 of these vouchers where individuals are taking advantage of them around the city. Right now, we have 90% utilization rate of our voucher count. So we're using 90% of those 1,700 that we have available, but we're using 95% of the budget. So sometimes the vouchers cost a little bit more depending on the market you're in. So you have to spend a few more dollars. These are goals that HUD sets. They want a 95% utilization rate of the budget, and so we are hitting that utilization rate. The other part I think is important to this when we talk about rental housing is that we do work in cooperation with the City of Lansing, although we're not working together. We're kind of doing the same thing in the sense that we require rigorous inspections of all the houses where we rent, where we provide a voucher to that tenant. So we've leveraged and worked with the City of Lansing on what the best practice standards are in terms of rental housing, in terms to complete these inspections. We hire a third-party company that actually does our inspections for us. We complete about 100 inspections a month. We're required under HUD rules to inspect all of our properties on a every other year basis. And then any new move-in or new tenant or also a new landlord also gets an inspection. So of the inspections that we did last year, we follow our stats pretty closely. 53% of all of our landlords passed on the first inspection. If they don't pass, we've given them a list of things that they need to fix. 32% then passed during the following corrective actions to get their property back up to our standards and the ones that we work with as they relate to the City of Lansing as well. 15% we call miscellaneous. Some of those just left the program. A landlord might have sold the property. The new landlord doesn't want to participate anymore, or they're still in the process of completing some additional work where they didn't get all of the inspection work done. So we won't recertify them till they do. In addition to that, through this part of the Lansing Housing Commission, we're allowed to provide project-based vouchers to other developers. And one of the things that I wanted you to know is that we have two current projects right now where we're providing project-based vouchers to two developers in the area that will ultimately result if they're both get through MSHDA. Now they have to do this. We just provide the vouchers. If they don't get the vouchers, these are development deals that will not work under MSHDA's 9% tax credit program. So they're key to them even moving forward at all. And we have an opportunity where they provide an RFP to us about what they're doing. We have a criteria that we go through. If they meet our criteria, then we will approve those developers for those project-based vouchers. We have two current right now that are in the April round. And they, if they both go through, will actually result in $33 million more of low-income affordable housing in the Lansing area. And then also the other thing is that we partner with other areas to provide kind of specialty vouchers. And one of them is the Permanent Supportive Housing Program, where we support currently 74 vouchers in this program, and we do it while being only contracted for 70, which basically means we're getting money for 70 vouchers, but we're actually housing 74 because of the way we work with landlords, getting rents the right way. We can actually oversubscribe, and it's a good way to kind of stretch your dollars, so to speak. And the same thing in the Shelter Plus Care program. We're contracted for only 36 units in that program, and we currently are supporting 50 in those programs. I am going to put one little plug in here, and I've already met with the city, but I want to say to City Council that both of these programs right now are administered through us 100%, but we share the administrative fee because of some political decisions 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I don't know, long before me, with the city of Lansing, where we give up 50 cents of our administrative fee, but we do all the work. I have asked that be brought back in here. I think we've shown that we're efficient managers of those programs and that we should be paid so that we can do more work in this area. Right now, we're kind of hamstrung that we're giving that money to the city and we're doing all the work. So I am pursuing that. I'll continue to pursue it, but I just wanted to put that in since I am talking to the city council right now. In addition to that, we have a program with the Veterans Administration called the VAST Voucher Program. We have 144 veterans that we're currently housing in this program. And we have entered in the last year, one of those meetings that I took, we met with Child and Family Services. They talked about a need for foster youth as they age out of foster youth programs, finding housing. So we have created a priority with them where every 5th voucher that we have, a child coming out of Child and Family Services, the foster care program gets moved up the list, and then they can get moved in to help them transition out of foster care. So just getting into our strategic plan now, that's kind of who we are and what we've kind of done in the last year. Now I want to move into where we're going. You can see to further enrich our program, we're actually taking advantage of 2 HUD repositioning programs. These are programs that are promoted by HUD. They're strongly encouraging housing authorities all over the United States to take advantage of these programs in which we can then create investment into more affordable and better affordable housing in the communities where public housing currently resides. The first one is a project-based rental assistance demonstration program called RAD. That's how we talk about it all the time. Basically what RAD does is it converts public housing from public housing to Section 8 contracts. So from a layman's term, basically the money coming down to fund the rents moves from one bucket of HUD called public housing into out of another bucket called Section 8. So it's a zero-sum game to HUD. They're already funding the rent. It just gets moved to a different area of HUD. And the other thing that's important about this movement is it has no impact on the residents. The residents pay 30% of their income, whether they're part of public housing or whether they're part of Section 8. It doesn't change their lives at all. The only thing that really changes is the rules and regulations between the bucket when it dumps out the money from public housing has certain rules down to when the tenant gets the money and pays 30%, or we pay 70% of their rent. Or if it comes out of Section 8, there's a different set of rules that we have to abide by with that. And the biggest part of those rules is that under public housing, we cannot go out to the capital markets and seek capital. Under Section 8, we can go out and seek capital, which allows us to then invest in the properties and move forward. The other part of the Section 8 contract that's key, and I'll talk about it a little bit, is that it sets up long-term reserve accounts, capital reserve accounts, that allows us to put aside money today for future funding. The way we're funded today by HUD is it's purely a budget arbitrary process. You ask for $1 million, HUD looks at the budget, tries to get it through Congress, comes back and says, okay, we only have 80 cents, so you only get 800,000, figure it out. Under the new Section 8, we will have been setting aside that money, and we have a lot more control of how we spend the money and how we plan for the money through a capital needs assessment. So the other part of moving through RAD is that we can get into the low income tax credit program, which is a big part because that allows you to get to the capital as well. And then it just outlines, as I said, reserve requirements for future improvements. And we will transition when we go into Section 8 into new partnerships. It needs to be said that those partnerships are still wholly owned by or wholly managed, I should say, controlled by the Lansing Housing Commission. We will have a partner in there, but the Lansing Housing Commission retains all management authority as it relates to how we manage these new entities that we'll be entering into. The second program is the Section 18 program. This is designed specifically to work with scattered houses, and part of what the ordinance changes later. We're talking about this as well as how it affects the RAD projects also. This applies to the scattered sites that have 4 or few units that are non-contiguous, establishes opportunities to raise funds through the sale of these homes, and then also includes very, very robust resident relocation rights and potential home ownership opportunities. It replaces the public housing voucher that we have. So it goes from being public housing to more of a housing choice voucher, tenant voucher. So the person that's living at the scattered home, we will issue them a voucher, and then they can either continue to live in that home if it stays affordable, or they can move to any other home in the city that accepts housing choice vouchers. So there's some flexibility in the voucher that they'll get, where today the voucher says you have to live where that voucher is allocated. The benefits under RAD, it significantly updates our units because we can access the capital. We can put a lot of investment into each one of these projects and bring them up to standards today. Simplifies and stabilizes our HUD funding. We know where our money's coming from now. We don't have to worry about capital appropriations being done through a congressional and sometimes, well, I guess always political process. Resident rents remain 30% of income no matter what. That doesn't change in their world whatsoever. And then the buildings also, as a side benefit of this, our buildings and units will satisfy current ADA regulations. We've actually hired a third-party vendor that's working with our architect to ensure that we are, in fact, going to meet all ADA and fair housing requirements as we go through this construction process. And then we can also implement a series of green initiatives in terms of high efficiencies through each one of our properties. In the scattered sites, the sale of the scattered sites, obviously it gives us a huge capital influx here at Lansing Housing Commission. It redirects the capital, then we can take it to higher value uses, other projects where we could make them nicer and actually invest in them. Elimination of ineffective segments of the portfolio. Managing 180 individual homes and duplexes throughout the city is very challenging. 80% of my complaints that I get and the complaints that end up at the city level come from our scattered homes where they're not upholding the lease, and it's hard for us to get them. The culture I talked about at the very beginning, it's hard to impress the culture on these individual homes throughout the city because we're not there every day. We can't drive by them every day. We can't visit them every day, where our major projects, we are there every day walking around. We can see those projects and we know exactly what's going on at each one of our buildings. And then the other thing is it's going to reduce, as I said, a significant number of city violation and resident complaints that are tied to LHC right now. This is kind of just a screen that shows you where we're at in the process. Mount Vernon, we're running through the 4% tax credit program. We've already conducted what's called a RIN, which is a resident informational meeting. We got a chat from the HUD, which says that they've approved for us moving forward with the RAD process. We've submitted a low-income tax credit app to MSHDA that's been approved, and we've conducted a GIN, which is a secondary resident meeting that was mandatory as a part of this process. On South Washington, kind of the same thing, except it was a 9% tax credit, which means it was competitive. We were very excited to get that one. That's a very, very difficult thing to do, is to get 9% credits nowadays, and to get it down at South Washington, we were really happy to do that. So where those two properties are at right now is that we're moving forward. We're deep in discussion with architects on both properties in terms of the things that we're going to be doing at those two properties. We have weekly meetings with the architects on the things that we're trying to implement and making sure that we're covering all the bases. We hope to close on those late summer for Mount Vernon, you know, in August, September closing, with construction starting soon after, and South Washington will follow probably 30 days behind in terms of where we're going. Hildebrandt and Leroy Fro, we have submitted 4% apps for both of those properties as well. We got preliminary approval from MISTA to move those applications down the road. Both of them have been delayed by COVID-19. The final apps would have been in on I think May 1st, and it's been moved back now to July 1st. So they will probably close sometime either the very end of this year, beginning of next year, and we'll see construction at those sites spring of 2021 in that range. The next slide just kind of gives you an overview of where all this money's going and how we're going to be spending it. The first set of graphs there for each one of the properties just shows you on a per unit basis how much money we're going to be investing. You need to understand that this is not the amount of money that's going into an individual unit. So when we talk about $79,000 per unit at Mount Vernon, that includes the parking lots, the roofs, the landscaping, some of the other survey work and stuff that we have to do. But those are hard construction costs. Those are dollars that are going to be spent on the property. There's some additional money in these deals too for the soft costs. That's not included in this. This is the total amount of money that's expected to go into the project itself. At South Washington, we're at $52,000 a unit. It's significantly less because one, it's a 9% deal, and two, those are much smaller units. Those of you familiar with the individual properties. So it doesn't take as much money down there to do what we need to do in a 4-bedroom condo or a 5-bedroom condo versus a 600 square foot apartment that we have at South Washington. So, and then you can see the Hildebrandt and Leroy Fro numbers, hard construction totals, total money going into the deal at the site that will actually be spent on the properties is just under $38 million. And then when you add in some of those soft costs, the financials, permits, all that kind of stuff, the total value of the investment in the neighborhoods of the city of Lansing will ultimately be around $64.5 million of total investment. Executing the Section 18 disposition strategy. There's been a little misinformation in the public about this. I did meet with the Committee of Planning and Development. We went over some of this stuff with them, but I want to make sure that everybody understands what we're doing. Section 18, again, is a HUD-sponsored program. They're encouraging all public housing to go through this process. We have the 183 single-family homes and the 31 duplexes. Our sale goals are to maintain the resident rights and opportunities outlined by HUD. They're very, very strong in terms of the rights of the residents as we sell these homes, what kind of voucher they get, what we have to do to help them in terms of getting those vouchers and making sure that they can find housing, and we work with the residents through that process. In addition to that, we have made a commitment to work with the residents to evaluate home ownership programs. All current residents, not only of a scattered home, but all of our residents, even if they live in one of our other major properties, will be given the opportunity to purchase one of the homes. We're going to be working with MISTA. I've already had some preliminary discussions with the Capital Area Housing Partnership as well through their finance program, and even with the city in their financial empowerment area as well, about how we could refer our residents who are interested into those programs to help them understand what it takes to buy a home, and then work with them and try to get them that opportunity or provide them with that opportunity. So we've already begun that planning. In addition to that, we're going to remove from public housing. It increases our capital market options. Once we take them out of public housing, again, they're no longer incumbent upon that budget process that we referred to. Whoever buys the home now, because they're unencumbered from public housing, they can go out to the capital markets and invest more money into those properties as well if they choose to do that, whoever buys the homes. We're also going to identify the best fit with partners to negotiate with. And we're looking to, we have several people that have already approached us, several of them who want to keep them affordable. I've had conversations with the mayor, and we are definitely want to align our partners who we will be selling the homes to and the city goals, which is to keep as many of these homes affordable as possible. And so that is our intent. That's going to be our #1 goal, and our board is on completely aligned with that. We've communicated that with them, and they're in total agreement that that's what we're going to do. If the buyer does agree to keep them affordable and signs an agreement to do that, then we have an ability to negotiate a different price with them than if we sold them on the open market. So that's one of the advantages of kind of a financial incentive to buyers, that we can work with them a little bit. If it's not sold to someone that's going to keep it affordable, then the government rules require that we have to take the highest bidder, and we have to work with them as long as they meet some other criteria. It can't be just anybody. We can create some criteria for that too. And then we just want to optimize the community and financial benefits. One of the things that we're looking at with some of the people who want to buy some of the homes is how can we work with them on some of those programming things we talked about earlier, the GED program, the garden program, and some of those, and still work with their residents and our resident programs to continue to move forward and assist and work with those groups. The big thing in there that you see in the kind of orange brown, it says Section 18 requires the gains from the disposition sale to be reinvested. We can't just put this in the bank and sit on it. The rules are pretty clear that the money has to be reinvested into affordable housing within the footprint of the Lansing Housing Commission. So what are some of those potential reinvestment areas? One is that we may have to fill some gaps in some of this construction, particularly the Hildebrandt deal. We may need some money in order to make that deal completely work. So we'll use some of these potential proceeds of the sale of the homes to fill that gap so that we can complete the renovations there. In addition to that, we have some new project development. We intend to use that money, again, with the support of our board, to look into other ways to invest in affordable housing in the city, which includes purchasing of existing buildings that are already out there and renovating them, and creating more affordable housing, redevelopment of this building that I sit in tonight down on Cherry Street, and creating some affordable housing downtown Lansing. By building up from here, we could create a high rise and do some development right here with some affordable housing. And then also we could use some of that money. Some of the sites do not qualify for Section 18, which includes Forest and Hoyt, as well as 10 duplexes on Grovenberg. And we could use those funds to renovate those properties, much like we're renovating all of our other portfolio. And then implementation of the resident services. There is some flexibility in there to use some of the money for resident services that we had talked about earlier. Developing wellness center, health and dental on site. Some of those things are possibilities as well that we could use some of the funding for that as well. What are the benefits to the city of Lansing of the Section 18 program? Obviously, it increases the tax revenue because these sites currently are under a pilot with the Lansing Housing Commission. They would go back to ad valorem taxes, and the city would then accept that tax money, or they would have to cut different deals with the new buyers if they're going to allow a pilot, and that's up to the group I'm talking to tonight. And the last thing is investment by the new ownership. If they're going to buy these homes, they now have availability to go to the capital markets. If we retain ownership, we cannot get to the capital markets because they're still part of public housing, and we would be relying on HUD to provide us capital funding, which they've underfunded us and other public housing for the last 25 years. So the overview about the ordinance that you're going to consider. So I'm kind of moved on from our year in review to what you're really going to be doing later tonight. We want to provide the ordinance change request details and the importance of execution to this whole strategic plan that I just went over. The current ordinance 260 in the city of Lansing says that all of the Lansing Housing Commission properties are owned by the city. That's what the ordinance in general sense says. Jim Smirka might correct my actual terminology, but nevertheless, it's in it says, the ordinance says that you own all the properties. What we need to do as a part of Ordinance 260 in order to close the deals and move forward on our strategic plan of the investments that I've talked about earlier is that we need to have ownership of those properties. The other part of Ordinance 260, if you go down to operational control, is that the ordinance is kind of outdated. It still talks about some items in there that is not the way we presently operate. In terms of our relationship to city, it goes back to a time when the city was actually running the Lansing Housing Commission. These things should have been cleared up many, many years ago, but when the transfer happened, that didn't happen. So part of this is just cleanup of language to make sure that the ordinance reflects how business is being done today. The requested change is pretty simple. We're asking for the transfer of the property of the ownership of the Lansing Housing Commission communities, all of our 4 major projects, as well as all of our scattered sites to Lansing Housing Commission. We'd have to adopt the operational control. Will also adopt the edited language to formally state what the current relationship is between the city and the Lansing Housing Commission, and in that basically we're running the Lansing Housing Commission as we have for the last 10 years, even prior to my administration. The impacts under the ownership, it's going to make sure that we align with legal and HUD ownership. And in their understanding, HUD's belief is that we already own the scattered sites and we own the AMPs, as we call them, the larger properties. But the ordinance kind of jumped in between what HUD's understanding is and what the reality is. It would also then, as I already indicated, going to enable us to execute our RAD investment for the 4 major sites. They have to be in our ownership name as we move them into the new ownership arrangements. And then it's going to allow us to dispose of the properties through the HUD Section 18 program, as I just went over in what all that entails. The operational control, the impact of the request is just going to allow the language to align with how we're actually operating today. But the key to this whole thing is that the City of Lansing will continue to maintain your oversight through the mayoral control of our board appointments. The ordinance clearly says the mayor will continue to appoint our board members and therefore maintain that control. To implement, there's just 2 parts to it. Obviously, if we adopt the recommended changes to the ordinance, it's going to allow the transfer of the 4 sites and the scattered. It's going to update that language to the operational control. And then once that's been adopted, and I know we have a public hearing that we'd have to go through as well before adoption, we would just simply ask the city to execute a quick claim deed where they would move ownership of the properties over to Lansing Housing Commission so that we can then execute our strategy. So a lot of information, but at this point, President Spatafor, I am open to questions, and Ryan Robinson is on if someone wants to ask him a question as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fleming. Let me get my pad of paper here. I see Councilmember Garza has his hand up. Councilmember Wood. And I think that is it from my council colleagues right now. Councilmember Garza, go ahead and unmute yourself and then ask your question.
Thank you, Council President. So I got a couple questions here. Mr. Fleming, I reached out to you a while back in regards to your upcoming projects with Leroy Fro and the other ones, Hildebrand, I believe it was. And I was curious to know if it was going to go on to bidders exchange. I never heard back from you. Now I'm hearing that you have 2 developers receiving vouchers. Who are those developers? Are you allowed to share that with us?
There are no developers receiving vouchers. I mean, where we're at in the process is that once we get our architectural drawings tightened down, and we're really close to doing that at South Washington Park and at Mount Vernon. Those are the 2 properties that they're the furthest along.
Okay.
At that point, we will go out and we will send a bid out to general contractors who will then put together their request for proposals or answers our request for proposal. And then based on that, we'll select those general contractors. And at that point, then we'll move forward into the bidding of subs and in the other parts of a construction project.
Okay, how far are you off from doing that?
Well, based on our meeting last Thursday, we thought within 30 days, we're probably going to be going out to general contractors.
Okay, now, yeah, definitely like to see some of our local workforce get some of that work. And so I appreciate you answering that. Just follow-up question. The 600,000, I think you said roughly 600,000 in upgrade for the high efficiency furnaces and water heaters. Was that done by local workers?
Well, some of the guys live in the greater Lansing area. It was done through a program through Consumers Energy that they brought to me, where it was the end of the year. We had 30 days in which to do as many of these furnaces that met certain qualifications that they had. They had to spend the money by the end of the year. And they were rebates originally that were about 50% of the cost of a furnace, but because they had to get certain amount of dollars done by the end of the year, they moved the rebate to 100%, which is why we got them for free. And the company that had the contract on the rebates was Parker Arntz, which is based out of Greenville. And they ultimately did the work.
Okay.
All set,
Well,
Councilmember?
thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wood, you're up.
Thank you, President Spatafor. Mr. Fleming, I have several questions for you. I'm going to go back to the one that Councilmember Garza had talked about with developers. You had put in your presentation on slide 11 that you're engaging in a preliminary memorandum of understanding to provide project-based vouchers to 2 local developments. I think that was the question that Mr. Garza was asking, and it is the one I'm asking you. What are those 2 development projects that you're talking about?
I don't know if I have them offhand. I know one is the Walter French project. They've come to us through the Capital Area Housing Partnership and asked for, I think that project's asked for 8 vouchers, 8 or 9 vouchers. And then the other project is based in East Lansing.
Okay.
And the same, they've asked for 8 or 9 vouchers.
All right.
And remember, I just need to point out, those are not our deals. Those are someone else that's trying to do a deal, but
I get it.
okay, the requirement of the deal is that they need vouchers, and the deals don't work without our partnership, but they're not our deals. And whether we did 2 other deals in the fall that were both based in the city of Lansing in the October round, but neither one of them got funded. So as a part of our memorandum of understanding, the vouchers came back to us. We only had a letter that said, if the deal goes through, then we will provide the vouchers. And in both of those deals were in the city of Lansing, including one right down the street here, the Cherry Street. It was a Cherry Street project.
Okay. My next question has to do with the city of Lansing and code compliance. I know that we went through a series of issues with inspections at both your scattered units and your complexes. Can you tell us where you are? Have all of those issues been corrected, have been signed off by the Office of Code Compliance?
At our 4 main facilities, they have. We were all done in the summer of last year, actually, and then there's a 2-year renewal on those inspections. So we're set up for inspection again, I think in the summer of 2021, which would be not this summer, but next summer. Yes, we're all done with all those. We've closed all those out. The scattered sites are a little more complicated because they're based on the rental certificate and when the rental certificate says, so that's kind of a rolling inspection. Those are happening all the time. We get 3, 4 to 10 a month, depending on the month and depending on when the rental certificate was originally signed for that particular property. But I continue to work with Brian McGrain's department on all of those, and as they come in, they do the inspection, we make the adjustments. The window investment I talked about is a result of those ongoing inspections.
Have all the bills been paid on those?
Our bills?
The invoices from code compliance, have all of those invoices been paid to the city
Yes.
of Lansing?
All the ones that I have been.
All right, thank you. When you talked about the funding that was being divided between the city and LHC, you had mentioned it was 50 cents on the dollar. Can you give us a value of what that equates to?
You know, I'd have to ask my housing choice voucher coordinator what that is. With each one of these contracts, it's a little bit different, but I can get that and get you that information. The administrative fee, every grant that you get has an administrative fee.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, an agreement was reached between our two entities that we would share that fee for some reason. And I was told that we were told we were going to share the fee, is what I was told.
I'd like to know what that number is.
Yep.
Because those dollars could affect the admin within that department. So I would like to see what those numbers are. I realize that this is wasn't part necessarily of your presentation, but I'd like to know how you have been addressing COVID-19, how you are doing disinfecting. You talk about several programs that are going on within the different sites, and I can assume that many of those are put on hold at this point. Because of that, can you talk to us a little bit about how you're handling that situation?
Well, first of all, we went remote before the government went remote. We left on a Friday. I think the order came down on the following Monday, and we've been working remote. Our primary operational strategy right now is that we are considered essential employees, so all of our folks are working. We're handling maintenance requests on an emergency only. So if it's an emergency request, we're responding to those. The day-to-day stuff that would normally be part of a regular work order, we're not doing that. We're still turning units. So if someone moves out, we'll turn that unit and we are moving people in. Interaction with the management team is done on an appointment only. So any of our residents at any point can meet with one of our managers. They just have to call and make an appointment. And then we obviously are operating with the social distancing and the other things that go along with that. One of the real things that happened during this that really drove a lot of work into our plate is that, again, our residents' rent is based on 30% of their income. If their income changes dramatically, at any point during the year, they're allowed to come in and do what's called an interim, which means that we will take the new information. If they were making $300 a week and they're going to $100 a week, we file that paperwork with HUD, which then if they were making $300, they're going to pay 30% of that, $90. And then we change it to 100. That means their rent's going to go to $30 from the $90. So we've done, I'd have to add it up, but we've done in excess of probably 100 what we call interim certifications so that we could represent the new income level of our residents relative to their rent. But outside of that, we cleaned the South Washington building. I had a company come in and wipe that down completely a couple weeks ago. We are managing all high-touch areas in that building are getting cleaned twice a day, except on the weekends. They only get cleaned once by our on-call manager. And then all the other buildings are, you know, they have their own entrances, so the residents are responsible for their own entrances. South Washington is the one building that continues to concern me because of the way the building is designed. But so far, our residents have been doing a pretty good job. We had to have to put out a couple of additional letters about social distancing at our properties, and some of our residents that were not doing that, and you know, basically threatening that if parties and other things continue to happen, that we would call the police, as well as their neighbors are obviously allowed to do that as well. But overall, it's been pretty good. In fact, most of my managers report that the properties have been pretty quiet, and they've been pretty happy about that.
Okay, let's see. I think I had just a couple of more here. With the consumer's energy on the installation that you had with that, did you reach out to the Board of Water and Light? Because I know they were doing some of those same types of things. Have you done anything with them?
Yes, we are in constant communication with the Board of Water and Light. Their program was not a part of this program that we were involved in this particular thing, but is a part of the RAD and the rehabs that we're doing. We're communicating with the Board of Water and Light on all the lighting, all the electrical that's going on at each one of our properties. And we have also reached out to them because one of the things that we're looking at South Washington Park is putting solar panels on the top of South Washington Park. And we have reached out to the Board of Water and Light and begun discussions with them about how we might work with them to do that project if it financially fits into our budget. So yes, we do communicate with Board of Water and Light. I have a contact with them on programs in terms of the rebate programs.
All right. And then on the 183 scattered sites, Do you have any idea what the longest tenant is in those sites? Because my work in the neighborhood, you have some that have changed over frequently, and then you have some that people have raised their families and have been part of that community for a number of years. And if those houses were sold and they weren't able to purchase them, it could be quite traumatic on them for moving.
I do not have that at my fingertips. I'm sure that we have somewhere in the bowels of our computer programs something that tells us how long the lease has been on that particular property. But I don't know that off the top of my head. You're right, we do have some that turn over quite frequently, and I'm sure there's some others that have been there a long time. Just like in our regular units at Mount Vernon, Leroy Flow, I've talked to people have been there for 25 years, and
Right.
then obviously we have new people that move in all the time. So I'm sure it's out there somewhere, Carol, but I don't know where it's at.
If you could get us that information. Mr. President, I have one question on the audit. Is it appropriate to ask that question at this time?
The audit of the housing commission?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. In looking at the audit, it talks about the deficiencies in internal control. Can you address that and how you've looked at that and what you're doing to take care of those deficiencies?
Those deficiencies don't exist anymore. I think they have to carry it forward for 2 years after they did exist. So that's still a carryover from the previous, when we were still classified as a at-risk or low performer. And they will go away next year with I think this would be our second year in a row operating as a standard performer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Wood. I saw Councilmember Betts. Anyone else before we? All right, Councilmember Betts.
Hey, just one question. I know that in New York, New York City, they recently switched over to the RAD program for most of their public housing. And there's a lot of tenants that came forward and activists that came forward and worked on some additional protections and things like that for tenants, because the RAD program has had some problems in the past with other tenants or in other cities. So my question to you is, how are you engaging the tenant community? What are you doing to make sure that they're comfortable with this? How are you ensuring that the protections that tenants need are in place as you move forward in switching from this current program into the RAD program?
A couple of things. First of all, again, we have a third-party consultant that we've hired to make sure that all of the resident right requirements that are part of RAD are being met. There's some noticing that goes in with that in terms of how far in advance we have to notice them. Also, how we work with them in terms of relocation. A lot of the issues that you read about in the paper from the larger cities is that they actually went through the Section 18 program of RAD, where they disposed of a building and they had to move tenants off-site. They had to find other housing for them a period of time where they rebuilt, or even if they went through RAD, they had to move the tenants off-site while they were doing major reconstruction of the building. With all of our RAD properties, no one's going to be moved off-site at this point. Our tenant relocation plan, we're kind of about halfway through it right now, developing that plan, is got us moving people within buildings on the property. So for example, at Mount Vernon, we'll dump out building number 1. We'll move everybody out of there into an already vacant unit if there's not a vacant in that building, somewhere else on the property. And then once that building's been renovated, we'll move 5 residents into there. We'll dump out another building and then move across the portfolio. So no one's going to move off the property. The only question and concern that we've really gotten from residents as a part of our resident meetings is that some of them want to go back to their exact unit. That's not going to happen. So if I was in building 13, unit 4, I may end up in building 11, unit 2. That's just part of the tenant relocation. We're not going to be able to move everybody back into the exact unit they were in. They will be properly sized. So if I was in a 3-bedroom, I move into a 3-bedroom. If I qualify for a 4-bedroom, and I'm currently living in a 3rd bedroom, we will right size you at that time, is what we call it, to make sure that you're in the unit that you're supposed to be in. And then in addition to that, not only using the 3rd party, I've also hired a coordinator to work with our residents on that. And part of that we're developing right now is a resident survey. We're going to sit down with each individual resident, and they're going to fill out the survey as to what their needs are. Do they want us to box up their stuff? Are they going to box it up? Do they want us to provide boxes? Do they want us to move the stuff? Do they want to move their stuff? So each individual tenant is going to have their own survey filled out, and they'll have their own interview in working with our tenant resident coordinator, relocation coordinator, and making sure that each resident, even assisting them in moving cable, moving electricity, utilities, that kind of stuff, and making sure that they know how to get that stuff into their name. The rights are very robust, and we're going kind of the extra mile to make sure that we've hired someone internally, as well as using the 3rd-party vendor who knows the ins and outs of the program, to make sure that we're meeting all the letter of the law as it relates to RAD and the RAD transition.
Thank you for explaining that. I'm not so much worried about the letter of the law, but the fact that the law may not be enough for protections, and I'm always making sure. I mean, for example, in New York, the advocates and the tenants made an agreement outside of the legal precedent within RAD to allow for organization, to allow tenants organizations to be structured. And that is something that they had to agree to outside of the RAD process. So I'm wondering if you are working with tenants and advocates in the housing space to ensure that they feel like this is a good deal for them as well. Because these tenants that we keep talking about are human beings, and I want to make sure that if they're getting relocated, that they're also getting something out of this deal that isn't just capital reinvestment, because there's more to a building than just the capital improvements. So we'll talk about this more. I'm not exactly sure on the research, but we can be in contact after this as well.
Well, I think the big thing is we need to talk about what we're doing here at Lansing, comparing us to large cities and what they're doing there. I think one of the things you can see from the presentation earlier, we talked about a resident coordinator providing more goods and services and other opportunities to enhance the lives of our residents, is that this board of directors and my staff are very dedicated to go beyond just housing. We see ourselves as much more than that. You know, from the GED program to the program at the Michigan State Extension, all of those are additional programs that are not required by the letter of the law that we fund. But my board and our staff are researching those and entering into more of those agreements every day, where we can assist our residents because we believe that we're more than just a house of brick and mortar as well.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to ask those questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Fleming before we move on? All right, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Fleming, thank you for your time this evening. You might want to stick around just in case there's some questions on the ordinance change, but we're going to move on to that and leave it in the capable hands of our city attorney for the time being. The next item on the agenda is a resolution introducing and setting the public hearing for Ordinance Amendment Chapter 260, Section 260.05, allowing ownership in Lansing Housing Commission's name as detailed in the presentation from Mr. Fleming. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution? It's been moved by Councilmember Spitzley. Is there other discussion on this? Councilmember Wood.
Could we have the city attorney, because I know there's minimal changes, but could he go through what those changes are, not only, again, for our edification, but for the public who's listening in at this time?
Absolutely. Mr. Smirka will have you do that. I will just let everyone know that if we do pass this resolution this evening, we'll be taking it up at council to set a public hearing for May 11th, just to set the stage there. So, Mr. Smirka, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You're unmuted, sir.
Okay, thank you. So there are only a couple sections of the current ordinance that are being changed. Again, there's a state statute that applies to the Housing Commission. Basically, you've got some property that's owned by the Housing Commission in its own name. Most of the property is owned in the name of the city for Lansing Housing Commission purposes. This is going to transfer all the property to the Housing Commission. You're basically making the Housing Commission more independent with only the restrictions that you find in the Housing Commission statute. So, so the real property is going to be held in the name of the Housing Commission instead of in the city. It's all going to be part of one transaction, putting again all those touches that are needed to make it independent. Liability insurance is going to be, obviously it's going to be required, but the city is going to have to be named as an additional insured on the policy. The rules of procedure can be adopted by the Housing Commission, and unlike what you see in other boards where it has to get approved by the city council, in this case, the ordinance originally said the rules can be adopted by the Housing Commission itself. So that's not a change, that's staying. Let's see, and then contracts, they can do their own contracts. The reporting function is still there. That's basically all the changes that are found in the ordinance. There's some minor changes regarding the fiscal year and when the report is due, but in essence, it just gives them a greater degree of independence, which is contemplated by the statute.
First, we've got Councilmember Spitzley, then Councilmember Wood with questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just wanted to follow up on what Jim said. This ordinance came before the Committee of Development and Planning, and initially the ordinance just covered the transfer of the property, the scattered homes and such. And so as we were looking through the ordinance, my question to Mr. Fleming was that there was a number of things, some of the things that Jim has already mentioned that were outdated in the ordinance. You know, some of the other things that Jim didn't mention is that, you know, employees of the commission shall be selected and paid by such methods as council deems appropriate. And they also had some other things in their salary, setting of salaries and some, and such like that, that were really not applicable anymore. And so working with the city attorney, we looked at those, we looked at the ordinance, and again, it's just such a small section, but we wanted to make sure that if we're gonna, you know, change it to allow for the transfer of the scattered homes, we had to look at it wholesale and make all the changes that were not, that were outdated.
Am I still on, Peter?
Yes, Jim.
Following up on Councilwoman Spitzley's comment, in the previous version, the salaries were set for officers and employees with the approval of the mayor. And this puts it into the hands of the board to make those salaries and compensation adjustments.
Thank you, Mr. Smicker. Councilmember Spitzley, are you finished?
Yes, I am, and that was one I did not mention, and so thank you, Jim. And that's under 260.05A, and then 260.05C talks about employees of the commission. So there were things in there that obviously weren't applicable anymore and that needed to be revised.
Thank you. Councilmember Wood.
Just a couple of questions. Mr. Smirka, you had mentioned the liability insurance. If we are no longer property owners with this, why are we still going to be responsible for having some type of liability? And I'm assuming that they're paying for it, but will be named as part of that. But I'm still trying to figure out why.
Well, there are issues. Again, the board's going to be, you know, tied to the city. I believe it's the appointment by the mayor. We've got some building inspections that will occur, even maybe during the interim of the transfer. There may be claims, lawsuits filed that may go back 3 years, 6 years in some cases. So we just have to be protected for past events and any future events, depending on what assistance we give to the Housing Commission and its portfolio of houses and inspections and things of that nature.
My next question had to do with when we changed the charter dealing with compensation that was given for people leaving service with in employment. It was indicated that the Housing Commission was also part of that. Will these ordinance changes make a difference to that section of the charter?
Yes, because compensation being lodged in the board of the directors of the Housing Commission.
So they would no longer be under that charter provision?
Yes.
Okay,
I
thank you.
just want to follow up again on the insurance. For what I said, the reasons for the insurance is valid, but it mainly was intended to cover the period of time between the transfer of the property to when the ownership is in the city, and then there will be a point in time when it gets transferred to the Housing Commission. That insurance is really intended to cover that gap.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wood. Councilmember Spitzley, did you have another question?
Do. I mean, when we were looking at the ordinance, that was one of the things that I had initially, we had initially struck out. And so, you know, and I don't really have a dog in the fight either way, but it just seems to me that, you know, that gap in between or that coverage could be done through, you know, a memorandum of understanding or something, because once this process happens in a year or so, that won't be applicable anymore. And so theoretically, you know, we'd have to come back and clean up the ordinance. And so my question to Jim is there another mechanism that can be done, accomplished, other than leaving it, you know, in the ordinance if what you're saying is that it's temporary?
Let me just get the ordinance back here in front of me. It's fine as it is, because if the city still has an interest in the property, then the insurance should cover it. If we no longer have an interest, then it won't be necessary. So it'll be self-executing.
So, Councilmember Spitzley, sounds like the answer is we don't need to. It sounds like it's fine in the ordinance, is how I hear it. And then Councilmember Wood.
Since we're just setting the public hearing, this would give the city attorney time to look at this, and we have even till the night of passage if we need to make changes to it.
Yes, and and the timeline on this is if we're going to have this implemented, it should be done before June 1st, because there are some timelines that the LHC is looking to meet on that timeline. If we don't get it done, that's a different story, but we have some time to make sure that our questions are adequately answered. With that, we'll move to Councilmember Dunbar, and then we'll entertain them. Then we'll call the question on this issue.
Eric, can I just add one thing to that?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Again, we're not just talking about 4 buildings or 5 buildings. We're talking about a lot of scattered sites, and the actual transfer may take time. You get a closing. So that's, there may be a long period of time where the insurance will be necessary.
Right. That makes sense. Thank you, Jim. Councilmember Dunbar.
Thank you. The homes that were owned by one church, one family, is there any way to roll those into this for transitional housing? Because now that there was a part of the presentation that talked about emergency rehousing. What happened with those homes, and can they be rolled into this in some way? Can they be purchased by or made part of the inventory for LHC?
We have those homes were owned by OCOF, which is still in existence, but it's under a court receivership. So it's a separate corporation. The city has no say in it right now, except its interest to get an audit about what happened to the federal and state funds or city funds. but the receiver is the owner. And we have a conversation with the receiver to see where things are tomorrow. I think I can raise that question tomorrow to see if there's any interest. The receiver won't go on, receivership won't go on forever. The receiver either is going to have to dissolve the company, the corporation, or the receiver is going to have to appoint a new board. Remember, that's what the receiver can do with the acquiescence of the court. But if it continues with a new board, there's always a potential there, or the receiver can enter into a transaction. So we'll raise that issue tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you all. The motion before us is a resolution introducing and setting a public hearing for ordinance amendment chapter 260.05. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Spitzley. She's muted, so I'll move on. Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Betts,
Yep.
Councilmember Dunbar,
Yes.
Councilmember Garza,
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein,
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor,
Yes.
and I don't see Councilmember Spitzley back on here, so it's 7-0 for a May 11th hearing. Councilmember Spitzley.
There we go. Councilmember Spitzley, the motion before us is approval of the resolution setting the public hearing. How do you vote?
Yes. Yes.
Motion carries 8-0. The next two items on our agenda are reappointments to various boards. The first is a resolution reappointing Cassandra Nelson as an at-large member of the Historic District Commission with a term expiring June 30th, 2022. Vice President Hussein, I see a motion from you.
So moved.
Is there further discussion on this reappointment? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Spatafor,
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley,
Yes.
Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Betts,
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar,
Yes.
Councilmember Garza,
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein,
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0. The next item is a reappointment of Monica Janer to the Ingham County / City of Lansing Community Corrections Advisory Board with a term to expire September 17th, 2020. Again, this is a reappointment. Is there a motion from, it looks like a motion from Vice President Hussein to approve the resolution. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those, I'm sorry, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor,
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley,
Yes.
Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Betts,
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar,
Yes.
Councilmember Garza,
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0. The next two items look like they're appointments, but they are actually reappointments. Miss Whitfield moved from the 1st ward to the 4th ward, so is no longer eligible to serve as the 1st ward representative. And in her place, the mayor has appointed Mike Dombrowski and put her as the 4th ward. So both are reappointments. Mr. Dombrowski is currently an at-large member. This will create a vacancy of an at-large seat. But it's a little bit of shuffling. So while they are new seats for these individuals, they are reappointments to the Parks Board in general. So we'll take the first one, resolution appointing Mike Dombrowski as the 1st ward member, and I will turn that over to Brandon Betts as council member from the 1st ward. I see you made the motion. Is that
Yep.
Mr. Betts? Very good. Any further discussion on that item? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Hussein,
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor,
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley,
Yes.
Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Betts,
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar,
Yes.
Councilmember Garza.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0. The next item is an appointment of Kimberly Whitfield as the 4th ward member to the Park Board with a term to expire June 30th, 2024. As I mentioned, she used to be the first ward member. Now she's being appointed as the fourth ward member due to a move. And I see Councilmember Jackson, the fourth ward representative, has made that motion. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir. I would move Kim Whitfield to what you said.
Very good. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Garza,
That's you.
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein,
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor,
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley,
Yes.
Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Betts,
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0. The next item before us is the 11th Amendment to the amended and restated real estate purchase and development agreement regarding the Red Cedar Development in Continental Ferguson, Lansing, LLC. We received a lengthy presentation on this at our last meeting of the City Council. It is the intention, it is on the agenda for this evening's City Council meeting. Is there a motion to approve this resolution? It's been moved by Vice President Hussein. Is there further discussion moving this out to City Council? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Dunbar,
Yes.
Councilmember Garza,
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein,
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor,
No. I'm sorry, yes.
Councilmember Spitzley,
Yes.
Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
No.
Passes 7-1.
Thank you. Let's get through item H. I'm going to skip around real quick. We will come back to the budget discussion. But item H has already been noticed the notice has been sent given the timeline. So we need to make sure we handle this one this evening. So we are going to take item H, which is resolution setting the public hearing on a noise waiver for the E.T. McKenzie Company regarding underground utility improvements on Forest Road right-of-way. Is there someone from the administration who will be presenting on this? I don't see anyone. Let me pull it up. Hold on a second. Trying to. So this is a resolution. There we go. Found it. Setting a public hearing for May 11th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in City Council chambers for utility improvements with a noise waiver from the period beginning May 12th, 2020 through September 19th for E.T. McKenzie Company requesting a waiver to work on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then also just stating that the contractor be granted the requested noise waiver in order to limit the amount of time local access for property owners is impacted, limited the amount of time that vehicular traffic will be detoured, and keep the project on schedule. So they're adding Saturdays to this, not extended evening or early morning hours. Saturdays 8 to 4 on Forest Road for underground utility maintenance. Are there other questions on this? Councilmember Wood.
I do, but do you need a motion first before we start?
Yes,
discussion?
we need a motion too, please. If Vice President Hussein looks like he's very eagerly making that motion. So
I'll move the resolution.
thank you. Councilmember Wood.
All right, thank you. My questions on this have to do with, I've been receiving some calls from people along that corridor. You know, that corridor is a scenic corridor. And there has been some of the trees that have been removed in that area. And there is now looking at underground cabling and things going in. I'm sure there's going to be a question at the public hearing or as people are getting the notices about the preservation of the trees, and those that are removed, are they going to be replanted? If we could get some information, since we don't have someone from the administration to answer those questions right now, I realize these, I'm not expecting you to, but I would like some answers to these by the time we do have the public hearing on this.
And Councilmember Wood, I'm going to call on Deputy Mayor Harkins in just a moment, but I will make sure that a presentation is provided by public service at the night of the public hearing as well, so that we're fully briefed on what's going on and that your questions are answered as well.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Harkins.
Thank you, Council President Spatafor. We will certainly have Director Kilpatrick here for the public hearing. We weren't sure if there would be a presentation on this piece this evening, and so for the public hearing, we will certainly have him available to answer questions.
Yeah, and in the interest of moving this forward because of the timeline that was under it, we put it on the agenda, and that one may have been one that I missed during our leadership meeting, so apologize for that oversight. Councilmember Wood.
If I could continue. If there's information, since again, a mailing has gone out, if there's information available, if that could be sent on to council staff and sent out to council members, so if we are getting calls on this, that we're able to answer those calls, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Harkins is nodding her head, so I will take that as she heard you, and you will get that information.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions on setting this public hearing for the noise waiver? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Garza.
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
Aye.
Councilmember Wood.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I didn't remember voting on that, but if I did, it passed 8-0. The next one is discussion on the fiscal year 2020 and 2021 budget. This is continued discussion with Q&A, sticking to our budget schedule for the season. And I think we've got Shelby and Jake both joining us virtually. Let me just make sure that they are here. There's Shelby. And there's Jake. Very, very good. So the floor is yours. And again, folks, just because of the way this works, I think let's let them get through their presentation that they have prepared, and then we can do questions after they've finished. Everything that we've cleared off the deck, we've got a few things that can wait if they need to, but we will be ending on time this evening to allow for setup for the next meeting. So if you do have further questions, we will continue these conversations at the next CAL meeting. Do not feel as if that we will cut off debate. It's just that we need to, because of the way that things are working, we need to go. So I'll stop talking and burning time. Shelby and Jake, it's all you.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you. I'm Jake Brower. I'm the budget director. You met with me previously 2 weeks ago when we covered the highlights of the proposed budget. I've provided the budget book itself in addition to the accounting level detail to all members here. If you've not received, please contact me as soon as possible and I'll provide that to you. So we have provided a balanced budget, but it is pretty clear to everyone here that revisions will be necessary and possibly over through the course of the fiscal year budgetary process. Our fund balance as it stands at the beginning of fiscal year 2020 is 10 million. That is a combined general fund balance of 2.2 million and our budget stability fund of 7.8 million. Our amended budget has us decreasing that to a combined 6.8 million. Several questions that we received over the course of the previous presentation. I received a question about the cost of the police officers, which we were going to add 3 new officers, which would be paid for out of reduced overtime for the patrol division. That will be found in the police budget, the 3251 codes. 708000 for overtime if you're looking at your line item detail. The salary for the police officers combined would be 160,000, fringes 60,000, benefits 88,000 for a total of 302,000. And there's about a 400,000 reduction in overtime that we're discussing with the police department. We have also included a purchasing position that will be funded out of contracted services that we're bringing in-house. That contract currently goes for 4 installments of 25,000 for a total of 100,000. The fire position, all features included, comes from an old employee position that we previously had at the city. And so restoring that position, we have pulled the old documents for that, and will come out to 103,000, everything included. I've also received a question about the Lansing Board of Water and Light projection for the current fiscal year. The Board of Water and Light is committed to 23.1 million for this current year, as is included in our budget, and 25 million for the 2 subsequent fiscal years. Additionally, to date, as of March 31st, we've received 23.3 million of income tax, representing approximately 60% of our year-to-date expectations. This is currently in line with where we would expect ourselves to be over the course of a normal fiscal year. However, with the extended filing date, I've just received some updated analysis from the state, or from the local treasurer here at our city, that up to 22 to 25% of those revenues might be pushed into the subsequent fiscal year, which may result in depressed fiscal year 2020 revenues, which would then show up into the subsequent fiscal year. And we're currently looking at the details behind that. I just received the email at 4:50 p.m., so I haven't had too much time to dig into the detail, but I'll be communicating with the treasurer to get more details. She's been helpful working with. And then I believe, lastly, I received a question regarding our ability to track Lansing unemployment statistics. We do not receive those statistics, but they're available through the Michigan Labor Market Information Bureau. And I found that they were up to date through March 2020 with preliminary figures. And so far, there's nothing clear in their data that really goes beyond the onset of this crisis and where we would start to see any impact. So over the next couple of months, we can continue to track those figures and incorporate them into our analysis. As far as my budget presentation goes, Shelby has put together an analysis of our expectations about preliminary estimates impacting our budget for COVID-19. In addition, if you have any specific questions going through the line item details that you'd like to iron out with me, I'm available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Shelby?
Thanks, Jake. Peter, I emailed you a document shortly before this started. I'm not sure if you're able to share that or if I can.
I am, yes. Just one moment, please. This scary one, right?
The scary one, yeah. So I'm going to run through some projections, and before folks panic, I just want to be really clear about the assumptions that went into this document. Kind of talk about where we think realistically we're going to end up for FY20 and FY21. So with that, we're looking at a spreadsheet here, and again, this isn't a line by line, level of detail here. This is a high level where we think we're going to be, like I said, at the end of June, and then of course June of FY21. So to summarize really quickly here, I know we don't have a ton of time. I'll try to hit the highlights. The first column that you see is just FY19. This is how we ended June of 2019, or what was in our audit. The next column that says FY 2020 is what was recently approved at council. I think it was approved in February. Towards the end of January, we presented a couple times, and these are the numbers that we have currently projected to end June 30 of this year, 2020. You'll see the green column is now what we're looking at, where we think we may end come June, given the impacts of COVID. So this is no way a proposed final amendment. This is just us trying to keep track of where we think we're going to end before this year is out. And then, of course, I'll talk about the few columns coming after that. But let me stop right there and just run through column G here, or the green column that's up at the top. So you'll see here, We received most of our property tax revenue, so I'm not concerned that we're not gonna get that. We already have most of it in the bank. Income taxes right now, as Jake mentioned, we've only received 24 million out of our budgeted 37 million. So with the feds extending when filing could occur to the end of July 30th, the state, of course, followed suit. And of course, we followed suit to say, yep, we have to extend our deadline for filing to match both state and federal government. So now our revenues that we normally would receive mid-April have now been extended out a few months. So that causes us, one, a cash flow timing issue of when we're going to receive the revenue. But now there's a question of, will we actually get what we think or what we budgeted originally, given everything that's going on? Certainly, our auditing guidelines say that if we receive the income within 60 days after the fiscal year ends, we can count it into our FY20 revenue. However, right now with folks with the unemployment rate that it is, are people going to pay their taxes on time, or are they going to say, I'm going to pay my mortgage and food and I'll get to taxes when I get to it, in which case we may have a further delay. So like Jake was mentioning, we just received information at the end of the evening here from the treasurer about maybe some gut projections or what she's looking at too. Certainly this is uncharted times. I mean, we've never experienced anything like this. So there's nothing I can flip back to and say, boy, what did we receive, this time last year? It's not really applicable right now. So just one caveat here as we keep running through. I reduced our state revenue sharing by one full payment. Treasury was said to expect both June and August revenues to be down 50% based on the fact that there aren't activity. There's no sales tax right now happening. The state's not collecting because no one's spending. And then I reduced the other services. So obviously we're not out issuing building permits at full capacity, parking, all those fun things. All of our revenue is going to be down because essentially we have zero activity for about 2 months. So just rough numbers, decrease these revenue sources by 2 months. I did add back here, you'll see the $3 million, and this comes from, at the bottom, there's kind of a footnote here. That's what I'm reading at. I added back the sewer lawsuit and the ramp sale, like we talked about a couple times during our budget amendments conversations. And that gives us back revenue of about $3 million. It is one time, obviously. And that comes to, at the end here, we end up with a fund balance of about 5.8, about $6 million, which is kind of where we thought we were. So we're not too far off of fiscal year 20. Again, assuming we receive all of our income tax. We're watching this weekly. We're tracking it as closely as we can to make sure that we'll be able to adjust if necessary. The hope right now is if we receive it and don't have to take from additional fund balance and we actually get the 37 million, that would be our carry forward balance to what you see now is listed. The column in between here that says FY21 proposed, this is what you have. This is what's been provided to council. Of course, given all the COVID information and changes, that budget doesn't reflect COVID as we submitted that to council, I think it's around February or so. So none of the COVID activity had even taken place yet with the numbers that you currently have. So that'll all have to be updated as we go forward. So the next column I'm going to talk about here is the orange column. This says at the top here, you'll see a 2-month mark, and the blue column next to it's 3-month. So what I did was say, okay, this pandemic started in mid-March where we shut down. So I've got 2 weeks of March. I have a full month of April or 4 weeks of April and 2 weeks into May. So that's 8 weeks or 2 months. And so all I did here, again, rough projections saying, okay, if we subtract 2 months of income tax or essentially 2 months of activity, that's 6.5 million or about a 16% loss. I did talk to the treasurer and say, this was my assumption or my guess, what's your gut feeling? Are you seeing anything? Are you hearing anything different? At that time, she agreed with this assumption just based on the fact that we don't have a whole lot to go off of other than the fact that we know activity hasn't really occurred for about 2 months or will occur by the time we come back. As Jake mentioned, we were able to negotiate an increase from the Board of Water and Light of a flat fixed rate of 25 million, which now more than ever has been really great for us to know that we're going to get that income. We've heard some things that potentially GM might not come back until August. If you recall, in years past, that was a huge hit to our budget when that factory gets closed. So we're excited that we actually have something flat and fixed in the Board of Water and Light right now that we can count on for the next couple budget cycles to help us kind of smooth out. I understand it goes to their board tomorrow night for approval. The next column down here is the state revenue sharing. The Department of Treasury right now is giving guidance saying plan on about 15% reduction in overall revenue sharing, which equates to about $3 million for us for this next year. And then again, I assume that we're back in full force, issuing permits and all sorts of other city functions to bring our revenues to 134.8 million. Expenditures, again, assuming that they stay the same, we were able to achieve some savings through healthcare insurance changes, along with property and casualty. Bidding out that policy saved about $400,000. So we were able to reduce our expenditures about 2.5 million or so. Ending our fund balance here, as you see, is a deficit, which we know isn't acceptable. Right now, given that these are our early projections, we'll have more to come on this particular, how we think we're going to end piece. To go on further, and I dare to say scare the council more, but certainly we don't know the full impact of this until we're back, until we're operational, until we can go back and measure the true impact. So if we go a third month, and let's say, yep, May 15th comes, and even if things open back up, you know, are people really going to be rushing into bars and restaurants? Are they really going to be attending shows if they're even allowed to? All the things that kind of normal life once looked like, you know, what we're hearing is it's going to be probably a ramp up or some sort of slow build up to all of this. So should we account for maybe 3 months loss of revenue, which again, just digs our hole deeper. So all I did again was take 3 months instead of 2 for our income tax, which brings us to about 9.8 million as far as the loss of revenue. Increased state revenue share loss from 15 to 20%, which brings us again to an even, you know, worst case scenario of a $5.2 million deficit for FY21. Now I can share with you, although we don't have a line by line budget solution right now, conversations with the administration have been very productive in that, you know, nothing's off the table. We're looking at everything to see how do we get to a positive fund balance here to end FY21. This is exactly the time. I think Councilmember Betts had a question about the additional 500,000 into a fund balance. I mean, certainly this is what a fund balance is for, right? It's about times that you can't predict or can't control, and all of a sudden something happens. This is when you would take from fund balance. So right now, I just by my gut or kind of how I think we're going to land, my guess is we're going to be somewhere between the orange and the blue bars. Somewhere between -1 or -5, depending on how long this in fact goes on and how soon we kind of resume back to normal life. So with that, that was a bunch of information kind of all at once. And again, we don't have all the solutions and everything worked out. I can assure you, department heads are working on lists. They're looking at how we offer services. Is there a better, faster, cheaper way to do it? How do we kind of provide the best service to our community at the lowest cost? Which we've been doing, and I think now we just kind of have an amplified, role on it to try to get our numbers to align. So, Peter, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I do want to mention just really quickly, sorry, Peter.
Go ahead.
The bottom fund balance does not include any sort of forgiveness from the IRS penalties. So right now, my understanding is that the Affordable Care Act reporting has been completed, and it's a matter of now negotiating, of course, with the feds to get those dollars back. That would be a one-time, of course, money back in our fund balance, but it's certainly something that we're going to aggressively pursue to make sure we can get that added back to our reserves. I'm good now, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Wood, I saw your hand go up toward the beginning, so I will call on you first.
Thank you. Series of questions. My first, looking at the police overtime and the 3 officers for that. Police overtime is normally not because of the fact that we have less police officers, but because there are crimes and issues that come up where we need to have more officers out on the road. So when you're looking at the reduction, what has the chief's information been as the overtime? How much of that was related to staffing issues, and how much of it was related to crime and other issues that they were dealing with?
I can talk just at a high level. The conversations with the chief were looking at all the overtimes by essentially division or department within the police department. This particular one showed that the overtime cost equated to about 6.5 or 6.5 full FTEs for that department or full patrol officers. And so the conversation was, is there a way that we can maximize the schedule to have basically more bodies or police officers out at one time to meet those minimum requirements for patrol, and then also decrease the amount of overtime. And obviously that has other impacts too, as far as not burning out officers sooner and those types of things, and having more able bodies available should an emergency happen. So specifically to answer your question, I'm not sure if it's, because of overtime, because of crimes were happening and more people needed to be on the streets, or if it was a lack of able bodies to get out, which required overtime to happen. So in that conversation with the chief, he agreed that additional 3 officers on patrol would in fact decrease overtime in half.
Okay, I would like some statistics to that, and I'll be glad to put some questions to you on that. And I'd like to jump over to your COVID-19 information that you provided to us now. In looking at this, you have talked about the reduction of revenues. One of the things that I haven't seen or heard are the cost incurred because of this, whether it's additional PPE equipment, whether it is sterilization and disinfecting and those types of things. How, again, with this spacing and the distancing, if you've got people coming in for permits and you're only allowed to have so many in the office at a time. I realize a large part of that revenue or expenditures for the parks department and things like that, there's going to be changes in that with the activities and things that go on there. So I'm wondering what you've looked at as far as putting into the budget additional expenses that we hadn't been considered when you put your budget together.
That's a great point, and I can certainly get you a listing. We have our emergency kind of a team that's been assembled. William Ingleter out of the fire department has been running this as far as tracking all the expenses and things go, working with purchasing to make sure that we've captured everything. One, because we're hoping that there'll be some dollars available, of course, that we can ask for reimbursement. But 2, of course, to track the additional expenses for this to happen. So that's something that we should be able to pull relatively easy and get that back over to you.
Well, again, right now we're being told that from the governor's office that it's recommended, highly recommended, that if you go out in public that you're wearing masks. Providing those to, emergency personnel is one thing, but to provide it to people that are collecting money from the meters, to, people that are out doing housing inspections, all of those things. I mean, those are costs and things that add up on a regular basis. So those are some of the things I'd like to see, what those are. The other is the fact with 54A District Court, we realize that particular floor is problematic, has always been problematic with the proximity of personnel and people coming in and out. I mean, those are going to be some questions as we start gradually moving into this that we're going to have some issues with as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I know, and Samantha maybe can speak more to this too. I know Nick Tate from our office is kind of putting together the what does life look like after we return plan, as far as how are we going to, staff things and make sure exactly like you said, people have the right PPE to be able to, do their jobs effectively. So that is something I know right now the administration is working very hard on and putting together quickly a plan for us to return.
So if, as we're going through this budget process, if we could see some of those numbers, it would be good as well with that. I know that there were some items that were brought up by
Councilmember Wood, before I let you go on, is there anyone else who has questions too, just so I got an idea of where we're going?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, very good. Sorry to interrupt, Councilmember Wood.
Okay, not a problem. Yeah, I realize I got to watch the time. I'm sorry about
That's
that.
okay. Well, and I do want everyone to know that we have a committee of the whole meeting next week where this will be revisited as well. Just so you know, this is not the last word we'll have on even this document alone. So please continue, Councilmember Wood.
I know a couple of the things that the fire department brought up during the public safety meeting had to do with defibrillators and the need for those. They also brought up their ladder truck. Those were not items that I saw in the budget. I realize it's even more difficult now But again, when we're looking at emergency services and things like that, I'd like some rationale on why those items weren't moved forward and how we're looking at meeting some of those in the future. And again, I don't expect an answer right this minute on it, but if I could get some of that information back at
Certainly. And I've talked, oh, sorry, my audio is horrifying at the moment. There you go.
We'll get some answers and reply back to you at the next meeting.
All right.
And I know Lisa from the Office of City Attorney is tracking these questions as well.
Okay. That'll do it for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a question about these proposed draft budget. Are they implemented in the budget, or are these just for our information for possibly next year?
So right now, these two tracks, the orange and the blue column, are not in your 21 budget at all, since we submitted that prior to COVID happening. So what we're, and this is, again, timing, I don't want to say couldn't be worse, but as we're working through trying to get a budget approved, I'm sensitive to the fact of making a lot of changes to it. But certainly, it would be, not right either to pass a budget that didn't include anything to do with COVID either. So we're kind of at a crossroads of, how much do we want to put in this budget to approve so that it's realistic? But, at this time too, since we don't have a true amount of how much it's going to be, I mean, the likelihood is that we're probably going to have to make some adjustments to the budget that council passes, but then certainly plan on a budget amendment, as soon as we have more information, probably, sometime this summer. But to answer your question right now, what you have in your hands for FY21 did not include anything related to COVID.
And that ties into Carol Wood's question regarding the fire department. I've spoken to the fire department since proposing the budget, and we have worked back some particular ideas. I've heard some of their concerns regarding, in particular, some of their emergency response items. And so we have put together some preliminary revisions to their budget that will be likely provided to you in the coming weeks. We did include in the back of the budget, you'll notice a CIP for heart monitor replacement. This was one of the items that they told us that they would not be able to provide these sort of emergency services if we were not able to replace these heart monitors within a certain period of time per regulations and state statute. And so that we've fit room in our capital projects budget for that, and that we'll be working with them on a continued basis, particularly with these additional expenditures. We've created new accounting codes, so we hope to provide you very accurate information and complete regarding any expenditure that we make, whether it's supplies or additional personnel time. We're hoping to track all of that for you.
And even from the council's perspective, we've been tracking like the purchase of a Zoom license. We would not normally have had that, and that's been tracked as a COVID expenditure as well. Thank you all. And this is not the last conversation we're going to have on this very important topic. I do want to move one item. Councilmember Wood, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead before we do that.
This is just a statement, and my statement is I'm going to be reluctant to pass any budget that just is a pot of money that's out there that allows the administration to make cuts and make changes to services without having an explanation given to council. I heard Shelby and what she said that, department heads are looking at that. But I want to know, when I'm passing a budget, does that mean that we're having so many of our employees doing something? Are we contracting? So all those are questions that I'm going to need answers to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wood, and we will make sure that there's ample time for those questions to be asked and answered. Item I on our agenda can be moved forward, can be held over because the deadline for that application has been moved by a month. I heard from Public Service. Item J is on the meeting for this evening. It is the acceptance of a $1,000 donation of gift cards to be donated to our police and fire by the Ide Corporation. Is there a motion to move that forward, Vice President Hussein?
So moved. Sorry.
Very good. It's been moved by Councilmember Hussein. Is there further discussion on this, moving it? Councilmember Wood.
I just have a question on the way the resolution is written. Normally, when money is appropriated from one account to another or something that's been donated, we don't have such a long resolution with this. And I'm just wondering, why it isn't just the fund number moving from one to the other instead of all these accolades that are out there.
That's a good question. Mr. Smirka, did you write this one?
Yes, I shared it. Well, first of all, you got two things here. Number one, you don't have a traditional grant here. You actually have a donation to the city. So it's an explanatory preamble as to why who's making the donation and what it's to be used for, as opposed to just a transfer or a supplemental appropriation. It's just explanatory. But so you get two things here. You have the acceptance of the donation and you have the appropriation.
To the fire department, police department for the purposes of, okay, meals and refreshments. Is there any other discussion before we take a Councilmember Spitzley?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I guess I'm gonna add on to Carol's concern. I mean, I think that the donation is laudable, and I'm pleased with it. For me, I'm concerned because I know that a lot of other companies, a lot of other people have donated, and some have donated, anonymously, and so, highlighting a particular person with the accolades of this resolution is, I just think it's a bit much.
Well, fine. The charter requires us to have a resolution accepting donations in excess of certain amounts of dollars. That's why that some donations that are less than this were not recognized through resolution or accepted, because they could just be accepted. That's why there's a resolution before us. Councilmember Wood, you had a question.
I understand the charter. I do.
My question would be, we receive donations for fireworks. We receive a number of these things that are more than $1,000. And I haven't, so I'm just trying to have a better understanding on this.
Jim, why are we doing it this way?
Just like if anyone donates something to the city, it's got to be accepted. Otherwise, let's take, for example, real estate. If you didn't do that, people could give real estate to the city that the city doesn't want. Here's a situation where someone wants to give money and it has to be accepted. And then it's like a supplemental appropriation was 2/3. I mean, this is the way. I don't know what other types of grants are being accepted, but every grant to the city should be accepted by the city council. I mean, this to be a standard.
Okay. Could we please call the roll?
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Garza.
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
Councilmember Wood.
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes. Motion passes 8-0. Thank you all very much. The meeting is adjourned at 7:02. I'll see you on the other side.